Rust Belt Capital is an elite Ohio-based private equity firm with a specialization in long-term, high-cash flow multifamily investments. If you're looking for long-term recurring income, you should check out Rust Belt Capital. From their approach to managing risk, to the locations they invest, the product quality they provide, this firm is serious about what they do, which is why the owners of Rust Belt Capital invest their money in every deal they take on. Review their case studies by visiting rustbeltcapital.com. That's rustbeltcapital.com. Once again, rustbeltcapital.com, or email investor@rustbeltcapital.com.
The market is down at least 30% on everything. Okay, so you have to make all that back. And so what's going to do that? It's not just interest rates. It could be cap rates and supply. And so that's why I think the next 18 months, I would say, are going to be a rough road.
Hello, left fielders. Welcome to the Passive Investing from Left Field podcast. Our community is focused on networking and education to help people invest passively and think differently. Let's go.
This is Ryan Gibson from Spartan Investment Group, and you're listening to the Passive Investing from Left Field podcast.
I'm really excited today to have Ken McElroy with us. He is an experienced real estate investor, podcast host, and the co-founder and CEO of MC Companies, a national multifamily investment company out of Scottsdale, Arizona. Their portfolio spans 9,000 units across Arizona, Texas, and Oklahoma, with more than $2 billion in real estate assets. Ken also provides real estate and personal finance educational content on YouTube and his podcast, Real Estate Strategies. In addition, Ken is an accomplished author, having written several books, including The ABCs of Real Estate Investing. Ken, welcome to the Passive Investing from Left Field podcast.
Thanks, Jim. It's great to be on. Always great to chat with somebody in my space.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this one because you just have a wealth of knowledge, and all the YouTube content you have is absolutely amazing. So, right off the gate, I recommend everyone go check all that out. But the first question I'd like to ask is kind of just tell us your journey. How did you get into real estate? How did you find multifamily? And just kind of tell us your backstory.
Sure. I'll give you the quick version. When I was in college, I, like so many others, I didn't quite know where I wanted to be, where I wanted to land. And I was lucky. I started managing an apartment building in the tail end. And it was only 60 units, but I learned a lot managing that property. And then from there, I decided to actually make that a career. I got my real estate license. I started managing multiple properties. This company was based in Seattle, which is where I'm from. And for the first almost 10 years, that's all I did was manage properties for other people. And I want to say it was over 20,000 units by the time I left that I had either opened, fixed, sold, whatever. And so I started off the first part of my career in property management, but then I really realized that like the really wealthy people are the ones that own them. I'm a slow learner, but I ended up, I said, I need to be on the other side of the desk and I need to own these. And it was a great place to start because I find when I'm negotiating with brokers or even sellers or even property managers, I really understand how properties are run. And therefore, it gave us a huge competitive advantage for when we're actually buying because, buying is the easy part. Managing and producing and returning checks to the investors is the hard part. So, now I have a company that we have, about 9,000 units now. We had more and we're about ready to buy even more. But the reality is we didn't really buy a lot in the last 2 years. And we have about 300 people. So in-house, I have my property management company. We have a development company, construction company. So we do our own in-house ground up construction. And then we have a series of companies that support the management company too, like credit and criminal background checks and collections and things like that. So over the years, it's just organically rolled out and mostly I like being vertically integrated because I can solve things very quickly that way.
Yeah, that's a great story. And I want to dig into the vertical integration a little bit because it seems like more companies are moving that way or they were where, they start out and then you slowly start adding the property management and then the construction. I haven't heard someone had the background checks and all that stuff in-house as well. So can you talk a little bit about maybe the advantages of the vertical integration? And is that something that an LP investor should look for in a syndication company?
Yeah, so I think you got to look at the reason why they would want it, first of all, because property management is not for the faint of heart. It is very, very difficult. In fact, I will tell you that if I could do it over, I would probably outsource it. And I know that's quite a statement because I've been doing it myself in house, but it takes 75 to 80% of my time, and to do it right. You can't just hire somebody and then create a property management company and with some entity and some accountant. There's a lot of nuances, and people think it's just collecting rent and paying expenses, but there's 1,000 things that go on, and it's actually getting harder and harder and harder. So I started there, so it's easy for me to do it. I actually don't feel like I'm inundated or stressed. But the nice thing about property management is that you can get way ahead of the curve. So the reason I like it in-house, Jim, is for this reason. I'll just give you a great example. We have a property that's next to a university, and obviously you have students coming and students going and all the things that students do, and you're never going to change that. So, but at the end of the school year, a lot of them move and go home for the summer, let's say. That creates a huge vacancy. Well, I walk down the hall, 2 months before. I sit down with the person that works for me, and I'm like, how are you going to solve this? And then also as things happen, like we had a fire. I shouldn't even laugh, but it just seems like every we have floods, we have fires, we have freezes, we've had hurricanes, we've had tornadoes, all those kinds of things. As you start to get bigger, you have that stuff. Those are real things, and they're now you're in the insurance world. Now you're in the renovations. Now you're working with subcontractors that you may or may not have known. All of that stuff, from CapEx to managing expenses and all those things, that's really what property management's about. I love going down the hall. First of all, I know how to do it, but I love having that in-house because I can move the needle fast. I don't have to go to some third party, sit down with them, and they work for me on a fee management basis, but not as a career, you know what I mean? So so that's why I like it. I feel like I can react immediately, and also I have a lot of leverage.
And as an LP, when we're evaluating a sponsor, whether it's in-house property management or they contract that out, what are the types of questions that we should be asking, especially if it is vertically integrated? Because I think then it kind of gets lost in the overall evaluation of the operator, where you're kind of evaluating their business, but you don't concentrate on, hey, who's doing your property management, because, hey, you're doing it. So what are some questions an LP can ask so they can really understand, yeah, these guys, they know what they're doing with property management, as opposed to maybe this other group who might not have it down as well?
Yeah, great question. Oh, well, first of all, if you think of the property management business, like if you were in it, let's say, and you've been in it 15 or 20 years, who would you want to work for? The answer is, because I've been in it a long time, is you'd want to work for a company that's been around for a while, that has a stable bank of business. They have systems, policies, and they have stability in their employment base, and they have all that kind of stuff, and their accounts are not jumping around. That's what you would do if you were a seasoned veteran in the business. So what happens is the professionally managed companies, the ones that have been around a while, they're the ones that are going to attract the best talent, without a doubt, because if you're in the business, that's who you go to, and you're going to make an impact there, and you don't have to worry about, are they going to have this account in a month or a year or whatever. So while a lot of people put together management companies, they do it, in my opinion, for the wrong reasons. They do it because they think that it's going to be a profit center for them. Well, I can assure you, this is the truth. I've had my company for, over 20 years, a management company. I've never taken a distribution from it, ever, not one time. I don't even look at it as a company that, for profit. Like it is literally just a way to manage my properties better. So you got to take a look at the experience, how long they've been around. But the real issue, Jim, is who. Like, who is it that's going to manage your building? And so that's the best thing, because you can have a really, really, really good person that moves from somewhere, let's say from California, and they move to Arizona, which is where I'm from, and they're on the market, and that might be phenomenal hire. Okay. Now, they're going to make a difference. Or you can find somebody that's been in Arizona that's jumped around for 5, 6, 7, or 8 companies over 10 years or 15 years, and they're going to be average. And so because that one person is going, just like anything, that one person is going to determine the success of that one project that you're invested in. So it does have a lot to do with the company itself, but has really mostly to do with the individual that's overseeing the asset, and how they run their life, how they run their account. And so it's actually, it goes pretty deep, because obviously, if most really good people in any business are not on the market, like they're working somewhere. High performing people have jobs. And so at this point, when do I get those people? It's not when times are good, and so I've assembled folks in my company over a long period of time that are just not on the market when times are good. So and when the market's zooming, average people look good, and so it's all of that. It's very common sense, but it's all of those things, and it's a fair amount of work. We spend a great deal of time looking at all the assets, how they're running each week, and we have serious action steps on all of them. I mean, the whole company's involved in moving the needle on the management, whether it's vacancy or delinquency or turnovers or work orders or whatever it might be, or customer service. My whole company's dedicated to the investor. And I would say most of the people that are just getting into the game are not there yet, and they want to be, but they're in it for a lot of times for the wrong reasons. And not always, but in most cases, they haven't been able to successfully find a good one, so they decide to do it in house. And they're just, I call it, they're in the first couple innings of a 9-inning game, and I'm in overtime. I'm in extra innings at this point. I'm trying to I already won the game, and I'm trying to upgrade my company at all times. And, our systems are tight. There isn't much that we haven't seen at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's the benefit of someone who has that experience, has gone through cycles, and especially in a period we're in now, which I want to kind of pivot a little bit to kind of some economic issues, because the Fed seems to have reversed course a little bit on interest rates, the number of cuts, or even if there will be cuts at all. And you recently said inflation is running hot, and the answer to that is to cut interest rates, which seems to be kind of the opposite of what most people think. So I'd love to dig into that and hear your explanation of why, when inflation is maybe a little bit higher than we expected at this point, why does that mean cut interest rates?
Yeah. Okay. So, of course, I'm looking at it from my standpoint, right? And so, but here's why. When rates go up, people pull back. And they stop spending, they stop building, they stop refinancing, all of that stuff. They stop buying. Okay. That's what the Fed wanted. Okay. I get that. The low rates create a bubble. But if you look at the demographics, we're 5 million unit, short, something like that. I mean, there's different studies, some are 3.5, some are, I've seen as high as 7. I don't know let's just say we're 5 million people, 5 million housing units short. That's based on the National Multi-Housing Council, the National Home Builders. You really look at it, and this is a result of what was over 10 years ago. We didn't hardly build anything from, let's call it 2008 till about 2012, 13, 14 or something like that. There was a long period of time where there wasn't a lot done. So that's a supply problem. So that is now gotten caught up. The low rates, people started building, but we're a builder. So we have 7 projects, and all in Arizona. We have 2 under construction. And we pulled back on 5 because why? Why would we pull back on 5? The construction costs are up and interest rates are up. So when that happens, what you do is you pull back. And it's the same thing with home builders. And so the costs to build something right now from somebody who does it is very expensive. And so, this started over a year ago. It should be no surprise to anybody. And so what's going to happen in the next year and a half is we've got all this supply that was really started over 2 years ago. I mean, a multifamily project for me, it's a year to a year and a half to build. And then it's a year to a year and a half to rent it up. So that's 3 years, let's just say. It's never 2, so let's just say 3. So, anything that's hitting today, in 14 or 24, that started in 2021. People bought the land, they got it entitled, they got the city permits or county permits or whatever, and then they got the financing, and all that stuff started years ago. And so that's all just making its way through the pipe right now. And those are deliveries. And so you're going to have this temporary time of softness because of new supply. And that's actually what we're seeing right now is flat rents and that kind of stuff. But then I'm telling you, Jim, that's gone. Like those, once about 26 or no, 25, mid 25, that just falls right off a cliff. And so what everybody's dealing with right now is obviously, and everybody's focused on inflation, and there's no question that low rates are inflationary, right? But what's really going to happen is if they gotta figure out a way to add housing, because call it mid 25, the last half of 25 and 26 and 27, it's going to be a heyday for real estate. We're going to have massive rent growth. We're going to have massive price increases. And the result is because of the low supply. And so that's why I said what we need is the Fed's going to have to figure this out, because what they want is they want me to build those units. That's what they need. They want everyone in the country to build those units, because what lowers rent? Supply. If I've been in 1,000 conversations like this and scenarios where I bought a property and let's say 20 years old or 10 years old, and then 2 or 3 properties get built around it, I got a rough couple of years ahead of me, right? And it's because you got 1,000 units or 1,200 units in 2 city blocks or something, let's say. Well, once they absorb, the market absorbs it, then of course it gets tight again. And then, so there's the amount of supply is very good for the consumer. And so that's why I took that stance. I really believe that, all of us want to build housing, but none of us are.
Right, because the interest rates, and you mentioned inflation, and recently I had economist Peter Linneman on our podcast, and he said he thinks inflation numbers will be close or below 2% by summer because of the lag in housing that's included currently in the inflation metric. So how are you seeing inflation? Do you think it's overstated because of the lag in the housing part of the index, or do you think it's still kind of hot?
I don't see any getting anywhere near there. I have a high respect for Peter, by the way. I follow him and I watch his stuff, but he's not a real estate guy. I am. I'm telling you, like 40% of the CPI is shelter. You tell me, like, how is housing going to go down? Like, we're at 50% of the MLS, the listings are 50% on the single family side, and we're significantly low on the supply side. And so from a practicality standpoint, what actually makes rents go down?
Yeah, I think what he was saying is that, there's so many people that have those low interest rate mortgages, so they're not moving, and rents have been decreasing over not now maybe, but the last 6 months or so. So his theory was the lag. They in the current inflation numbers, they have this big housing component that is higher than it will be in 6 months, when that is mostly the lag is what he was talking about.
Yeah, well, so but let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah,
like if you look at his, let's use his first comment. People aren't listing because they're in these low mortgages. He's 100% correct. What that also means is they would normally be refinancing, upgrading, moving to another house. That's consumption. That's GDP. That's the, more supply on the MLS. The lack of supply on the MLS is precisely the reason why prices are, for single family at least, are not going to go down. And so I witnessed this in '08. In '08, the reason why housing prices went down so much is because precisely the amount of people that lost their homes, they got listed, and the MLS was flooded, just as an example. So on the single family side, I completely disagree with him. But on the multifamily side, as I said earlier, we're going to have, and he's right about this, we're going to have a 24 and 25 is going to be a soft piece of from a rent standpoint, because you've got all these projects. And so that might be the leg that he's talking about. But we're going to have I don't think there's going to be any relief on the single family, but there is going to be some relief on the multifamily. But it's super short term, and it's possible that if you look at the March numbers for inflation, they were, I think it was 3.8. No, is that right? Yeah, they went up by a point, right? And so what you have is the Fed is fighting. By the way, we're just talking about shelter. Like, we haven't talked about food, and we haven't talked about energy, and we haven't talked about all this other stuff. And God forbid we get into some wars and stuff. So, I just don't see it. I think the Fed has a serious problem, and and we haven't even touched on the fact that the inflation, that the interest rates are killing the commercial office and multifamily owners, the ones that got bridge debt and all that kind of stuff. So that stuff that's going to hit the market. It's already repriced. I mean, if somebody bought something in 2 years ago, it's 30% less today, period, based on the higher rates. So, it's I just don't see it. I think he's right about rent, but I think there's a 18-month window on that. And then after that, he's dead wrong.
Yeah. Well, interest rates are not high historically, right? It's the pace that was the issue, I think. But why are the rates at this level causing so many issues? Was it just the pace of the increase, or is how you mentioned housing supply? That's part of it. Kind of why are people struggling at these interest rates, which they're nothing like they were in the '80s, and people were still able to make money then.
Yeah, so it's a good point. So you gotta go back to the very basics, which you're very familiar with, which is cash flow. Period. So I'll give you an example. I was in escrow on a large project, and our purchase price was right around 100 million. Let's just call it 100 million. And it was a value add. So it was a great project. I actually knew the project. It had a lot of rent growth because nobody had touched it since the 90s. And so really well located. We were excited about it. We got it in escrow with the seller, and it had the NOI and everything all checked out. So the due diligence was great. It was a great seller, great property manager. And I was like, this is going to be a great project. So everything checked out on that. And then what's the wild card that's left? Debt. Okay. So now it was about a 30 million down, and I had about 2.5 to 3 million in cash flow a year. So it's pretty good cash on cash. So now I'm talking about cash flow. So if I'm like, okay, if I can put $30 million down on something and I can generate $2.5 to $3 million, that's a good return. Okay. And that's why we put the thing in escrow. We had been through due diligence. We'd walked through the units and all that stuff. During that time, interest rates went up a lot. This is when the Fed was going 3/4 of a point, 3/4 of a point, 3/4 of a point. Exact same project, Jim. My debt costs went up $1 million a year. So now my cash flow goes from, let's say, 2.5 to 1.5. So now 1.5 on 30 million, same project, is a significant difference than 2.5. So it's $1 million of cash flow gone as a result of the higher debt. So that is precisely what people are dealing with, is that one example. And that's straight from me. And so same thing with construction. So on the 2 projects I have under construction right now, I'm actually in lease up on. You know, when we first started and broke ground, our construction debt was 4.5, let's say 5. It's 9 today because it's floating. So same project, right? So nothing changed except the cost of the debt. So when the debt costs jump up that much, your cash flow gets eliminated. And that's a whole other topic. And that's what people are dealing with right now, is what happens when you've got 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, even $100,000 more of debt costs, and all of a sudden you're wiping out and maybe even funding projects that you weren't supposed to just 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's a great example. And, talking about, multifamily housing, a lot of the issues came from the variable loans, right? That's the big difficulty people are getting through now. So is that the issue, or was it specifically the bridge lending that has caused the problems?
Yeah, great question. So yes, on all of those. So you're right on every question. The thing is a bridge loan is typically variable or adjusting, and the just to let everybody know. So the way a construction loan works, or the way a bridge loan works, or the way any kind of variable loan works, is it floats with the market. So if like on that construction example, at the time we started the project and broke ground, it was significantly lower because the rates were lower and the spreads were lower. And so all of a sudden, over time, that changed. So with a bridge loan, what happens is, let's say you're trying to buy a project for, let's say, $20 million, and you believe that it's severely undervalued, and you're going to, let's say, grow the value to $25 million. Okay, so that's your business plan. You put some debt on there. You do it in a short term because you want to get that value first. So you put that short-term floater debt on. Then you get to that $25 million, whatever your business plan is. And then at that time, you put permanent debt on. So the bridge is always meant to be literally just a bridge from the time you buy it to the time you do permanent. And then there's a window where you're doing typically a value add or construction or something like that. And so that's what a lot of people got caught in, is they got caught during the value add time, during the construction time. And obviously, if you're buying something like your personal residence, and like my wife and I, let's say we buy a house, we're not going to want that fluctuating loan. We're going to want to do a fixed rate loan. We want to know what our payment is each and every month, as an example. And so that's tradition. That's what you would buy if it's stable. And not a value add. So those are the two kind of roads you can go down. And what happens is, the people that got in that first category of the floating debt, whatever that was, then now that's adjusted because rates have gone up. And so it's very difficult to anticipate those kind of rate increases.
Have a deal in mind and a group of investors ready to go? Use TribeVest to pool your capital together through a multi-member LLC. TribeVest has streamlined the group investment process, making it easy, quick, and safe to do business with others. Start a tribe and invite your partners to join. Then you can use the platform to collaborate with your partners, pool capital, and manage your joint investments. I'm in 12 tribes myself. It is a great way to learn from others, spread risk, and get into deals at lower minimums. Go to tribevest.com to get started today. Left Field Investors is a community dedicated to limited partner investors who are interested in building wealth through real estate investing. The community is focused on education, networking, and engagement with quality operators and partners. We provide tools, webinars, and a forum where members can discuss everything related to real estate investing, including deals, operators, investment strategies, and much more. Coming soon, we're adding a new tool, sponsor reviews. This will be a place where our members can rate and review operating partners to further help each other in our investment journeys. Check us out at leftfieldinvestors.com. It's an LP. When I'm looking at deals now, should we only be looking at fixed rate debt? I mean, the problem with that is it locks the operator in for these long holds, right? Because there's a big prepayment penalty. And a lot of times in the syndication space, at least, people don't want to be locked into a deal for 10 years. So is the option, get agency variable debt so it doesn't have that shorter term, or should we only be looking for fixed debt?
There's a bunch of loan products out there. So there's life insurance debt, there's HUD, like the 221D4 program or the 223F program. There's conventional, there's agency, so you have to really look at what matches the asset. If you're looking, the thing is, Jim, most people thought just like you, and they're like, I don't want to be locked in. Well, look at where they are today. Right. So you can do these kinds of loans with rate caps and, with negotiations on that side of it. You can hedge your upside. And I do fully understand the problem with, where are the rates going to be? And I want to do cash out refis at some point. That's assuming that the value goes up. And so that's another thing that you got to be careful of. And so one of the ways that perhaps you could structure this is that you could do, let's say you bought something today and you're able to get a rate of 6, let's say. On the multifamily agency, you can get, let's say 6. If rates go up, you're still cash flowing like you did on day one. Okay, so you're good. If they go down to 5 or 4, let's say, to where they were, your prepayment is going to be very, very low. Because what they're going to want is they're like, we're going to be, you're going to have it for some period of time, right? And so there's going to be a little bit of a burn off there, not as much as you would want, obviously. But if rates go up and the value goes up, then you might even get a check, believe it or not. So I've been in that scenario where, like we actually are looking at a deal right now where that we own. We're like 3% fixed. We've owned it for like 10 years and the trade out is 6. And I met with the people last week and they said, the lender's going to write you like an $800,000 check to get out of the loan, which is the opposite of what you would think, right? Like, because they're like, oh, I can take this 3% money and move it for 6. So it can work the opposite for you as well. But don't forget that if you hold something for some period of time, then it's, and the rates go down, it'll work the other way around, right? So, but also, if it cash flows on day one and you promise the investor some kind of return and you're hitting those returns each and every month and rates go up, they're going to be, nice job, Jim. Like, look what you're able to do. You're able to hedge this. If they go down and there's a lot of value, then you have to look at, maybe I do give up a piece of this prepayment or yield maintenance, in order to get some of this cash back to some of these investors, because it very well could be worth it if the value of the real estate has gone up. And that probably will be the case for many situations. So anybody that's buying anything right now, if rates do go down and values go up, like I think they're going to do in, let's say 26, 27, you might have assets that you're sitting at a 6%, let's say, and rates are at 4. And then you're going to be looking at a prepayment or yield, but you also might have 8, 10, 12, $15 million of value in there. And so maybe you say, listen, it's worth $1.5 million or $2 million even to get 13, so you just got to kind of look at that. And we've been on both sides of it, like I've had rates go up, I've had rates go down, but in every case, Jim, what I love is the certainty of my monthly, I want to know what my mortgage is, because that's what's killing everybody right now.
Yeah, that, for sure. And that's the next question I have. There's some operators that are our LP communities invested with that had solid long-term track records, extensive real estate experience, and they were exposed by the bridge debt and interest rate increases that were faster than anyone expected. And, what it exposed was maybe they had some operational issues that we didn't know about because it was easy to kind of just gloss over those when everyone was making money. So what we're struggling to look at is what do LPs learn from this, and how can we effectively vet an operator when someone that we really know, like, and trust, right, with a solid track record and experience, and they still had major issues and are doing capital calls and things like that. So how do you vet an operator in that kind of scenario?
Yeah, really good question. Well, first of all, if you take a look at our company, for example, I mean, I've been in business for 24 years. We only bought 2 properties. Now, you gotta wonder why. Like, why would somebody who has 4,000 limited partners that want to invest with us, and we raise money and it funds in a day, why would we not buy? So you have to look at that. So you have to look at that, and that's wisdom, that's experience. Did they buy rate caps? Did they not buy rate caps? And then who's their management? So it's all kind of basically everything that we just got done talking about. But then moving forward, regardless of all that, if you're gonna pick a horse, in many cases, Jim, if people can survive for the next 2 years, I mean this, like, these are good assets. A lot of these assets are very, very good assets. And could it be a bad operator? Absolutely. Could it be a bad property manager? Yes. Could it be a bad communicator, GP, all that kind of stuff? Absolutely. All that stuff can still be. But the market doesn't care. It does its thing. And so, is it the right asset in the right location? And how long will it take for that value to come back? Really, that's the real question. And so, therefore, is this a long-term, should I be putting good money after bad? How long do I have to wait? All those kinds of things. Well, let's just rip the Band-Aid off. The market is down at least 30% on everything. Okay. So you have to make all that back. And so what's going to do that? It's not just interest rates. It could be cap rates and supply. And so that's why I think the next 18 months, I would say, are going to be a rough road, because you're going to have, that's when all the operational issues are starting to emerge. And the thing is, a lot of these buyers, syndicators, whatever you want to call them, they don't even know what to look for. Right. So, it's like, I that's the reason I went back to I bought 2 assets. When I was trying to buy, we were at the plate swinging. We were trying to still buy based on the returns for fundamentals to the investor. And there were many scenarios, countless. We probably made 50, 60 offers last year, maybe at least. And we didn't buy anything. And so why is that? That's because I knew my low and my high, and I wasn't willing to push. I'm not willing to put my investor database at risk, and I'm not willing to push past that. And so therefore, disappointing to our team, we said no on almost everything. Okay. Not everybody did that. And so now they're reaping the benefits of that. They assume that yesterday was lower than today. Tomorrow's going to be brighter than it was yesterday. Well, that's not how the business is. And so, you have to take a look at that, and then you have to take a look at the asset itself, and you have to take a look at the team that's going to fix it. If it's an individual that has everything parceled out and is cobbling together some information through a letter, that there's nothing wrong with that, but you got to wonder, is that going to even work? And but am I bullish on the apartment business? 1,000%. It's going to have a rough 2 years, though. However,
yeah, and so a rough couple of years. So without trying to time the market, right, especially as a limited partner investor, they're very cautious right now. Current deals are in trouble. Maybe capital calls, distributions are being withheld. So how do we know as an LP when we can start investing again? I think it will be easier now to evaluate operators because we can look at how did you make it through this difficult time, right? Or did you? But how do I know? Do I jump into a deal now, 6 months from now, a year from now? When is there, when's the button going to go off that says, yep, now's the time?
Yeah, it's a great question. So a couple of things. One, I'll just tell you, as I said, I spend most of my time in this arena. Our occupancy for our portfolio is 95.7%, our whole company. Okay. So that's an indicator, right? And so you can ask these kinds of questions and is the occupancy of your property, the one you're in, market or not? What are they doing? Is it are they full? Are they not full? Are they collecting? Collections right now are all-time difficult. In my career, it's really, really hard. Our residents are having a tough time. Delinquents are much, much harder than they were. And so, all those, are they managing expenses? We just had massive insurance cost increases. How do they handle that? There are things that you should be able to get ahead of. How are you managing your construction or your renovation costs? Are you still doing value adds? And all those things are things that you need to look at in the short term. And then you need to see how are they handling these things and how are they doing them. So you can measure an operator, a property manager on the standards of today. That's really, really, really easy. And you should hold their feet to the fire. So when we started going into these difficult times, we'll say flat rents or concessions or whatever, a year and a half ago, I was working on, all right, so what we want is, because I'm no different, I might have a property right next to some of your LPs, right? Or maybe some of them might even be in mine. The issue is I always want to make sure that my property is running the very best that it can be. I want the rents to be at market. I want the expenses to be in line. And I want to figure out how to manage my debt. And if I can do those things, then I've done everything I can do. And so, but that's not the story out there, because I'm looking at deals that are 75% collected, 80% collected, even less. Some of them are 50, 60, 70% occupied. And so those are deals that I'm trying to buy, because I can step in with really good management and fix those projects for somebody else. The problem with that is it wipes out the equity on the people that I'm buying it from. And so that's never a good thing for, whoever owns that building. So this is really, I've been waiting for this time, Jim. This is the time where true professional management will shine through. And this is the time where people will get exposed, because lenders know better. And I've been through this before. I started in this business in the late 80s and the 90s. I've seen it before. They go back and make it to the lender, and then the lender looks for the professional management company. They're not going to go to a syndicator that cobbled together a management company, last year or 2 years ago, right? With an accountant and somebody who can walk the properties. That's not a true management company.
No, that's great stuff. I have one kind of mindset question for you. I know we're running up against time, but one of our left field investor founders, Steve Sue, wrote a book, Avoiding Rookie Errors as a Left Field Investor, and has a bunch of mistakes that he made as an LP. And I was watching one of your YouTube videos, and you had something similar with mistakes you made and some of the solutions to them. And there was 3 of those that I really enjoyed. One was stay in your lane. Another was, leverage other people's time. Don't do it all yourself. And then my favorite was adapt quickly with the R&D, rob and duplicate. Yeah. So I just love that. Can you just briefly talk about those 3, like the mistakes you made and kind of how you learned from those?
Yeah. So, part of being in this business is, I never am happy with the way our companies are running. And I mean that sincerely in a good way. Obviously, we have an incredible culture here. I mean, incredible. After 24 years, we have people that have been with us the whole time, and I think, you learn a lot, and things change, like interest rates change, or things get, oversupplied, even with low debt. And, there are the property management costs go up, they go down, and, you have employee problems, you have all these things. And so with that, what happens is, you learn a lot. You learn a lot. I've been through, now you can think about this. I've been through 25 property insurance negotiations on our annual. Okay. You learn a little bit, right? Like, same thing with my tax appeals, same thing with I've had 1,000 conversations on how do I reduce my utility expenses, right? What do I need to do to keep the best people, attract the best people, and compensate the best people the right way so that I have them long term? And I have had a zillion conversations like that, right? So you start to look at these things, and then I've made a ton of mistakes where, like everyone, well, okay, now I'm going to go buy an office building. I'm going to go build a property, self-storage in Texas. But, well, by the way, I've done those plus more. I did land development up in, Jackson Hole area, some big 10-acre lots and stuff like that. You start to realize, you get that Superman complex, like, oh, things are going so well, but it's really the market. It's not you at all, right? And so once you start to realize that, the market's got the wind at your back, and then from there, you have to be really good and just stay in your lane and try to be the best that you can. Once, it eliminates all this distraction, and it really makes you focused on what you should be the best at. And so that those are all some of the tough lessons I've had over the years. And mostly it's been time, money, distraction. And when that happens, guess what erodes? Everything: systems, processes, culture, like all of that stuff. It requires my attention full time.
Yeah, that's great. And to those listening, if you haven't seen that YouTube video, it's phenomenal. You got to go check it out. And the last question I always ask is, what's a great podcast that you listen to? We can't use Real Estate Strategies. That's your podcast. That's going to be in the show notes. But what's another podcast you like to listen to?
Yeah, I got to tell you, unfortunately, it's probably what a lot of people do, but I just love the Joe Rogan stuff. I just think he's fascinating. He doesn't really have a rhyme or reason on who he interviews. It could be like some, space, aliens. It could be, Putin, or I guess Tucker, I should say. It could be. He just has these comedian. Like, I just think the way he interviews and the stuff that he goes, he's super prepared. I have so much respect for him. So he's my go-to, and for multiple reasons, because in one case, I try to listen to other people outside of my space, right, as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Getting out of real estate every once in a while is refreshing. So if listeners want to learn more about you or your company, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, just go to kenmcelroy.com. I think is the best spot. That's the landing page for everything. And obviously our company is MC Companies. You can go and check out our assets and our deals, and and see what we bought, what we own, and a lot about our track record, our history, and our culture.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Ken. This has been phenomenal. Really appreciate you being on the show.
Yeah, Jim, my pleasure, man. Good luck to you.
Thank you. Visor provides investors with a secure platform that displays a comprehensive view of all of their holdings on a single, holistic dashboard. From real estate syndications to private equity, crypto to traditional investments, with AI-driven, unbiased, honest insights to maximize return. Visor is your one place to rule them all. Automating performance tracking, projecting future cash flow, analyzing all your financial documents, and much more in one powerful solution, making it easy to follow the money. Sign up for a free 30-day trial now at Visor.co. Thanks for hanging out in the left field with us today. If you are interested in becoming a left fielder, you can find us on the World Wide Web at www.leftfieldinvestor.com and click the subscribe button to join our community. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe to the show on your podcast player so you don't miss an episode. If you really enjoyed the show, a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts would be appreciated.
This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on the show should be considered financial advice. Before making any decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Passive Investing from Left Field and Left Field Investors. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.